Hello, everybody. Good morning and welcome back to the Morning Bulletin here on the Blood Red channel. I'm your host, Edward Kay. Joining me this morning is Ben Bocsak, and we are, of course, going to start by just getting a little preview in of Liverpool's pre-season friendly against Bayern Munich in Singapore today. I mean, Ben, first of all, obviously a clean sheet against Leicester, one of the standouts for me, given just how leaky that defence had been in the first two games of pre-season against, sides from the Bundesliga too. Obviously, do you think Liverpool will be? I mean, obviously they'll be hoping for another clean sheet, but I mean, how strong are you expecting Jurgen Klopp to go in defence, and are you expecting them to manage to hold out against, the best team that they have faced in pre-season so far?
Yeah, this is kind of the game we've been looking for when the fixtures were announced, weren't we? This is the game where I think we're going to see how good Liverpool actually are or have been in pre-season as well. I'm still expecting there to be two starting 11s. I don't know about you. I think maybe Klopp will play some of the players who've been longest in pre-season for 60 minutes or so, but I'm still expecting a lot of changes and all the players pretty much to feature who are on this tour. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. I'm expecting probably Klopp's to start with his stronger starting 11 like he started against Leicester as well. You would say probably the 11 that he put out against Leicester was very close to what we're going to see against Chelsea in the first Premier League game of the season. I'm expecting similar again. It'd be interesting to see if Szoboszlai is going to feature from the start. Obviously, he had that ankle knock, but I would really like to see him play with McAllister because they haven't played together at all in any preseason games yet. But yeah, I think all in all, it's going to be a tough test, a tough game. Obviously, Bayern Munich are in a bit of a transition period with Tuchel coming in. Would have been nice to see Sadio Mane as well, but obviously yesterday, just before he would have had the opportunity to play against Liverpool, his transfer to Al Nassr was confirmed, so we won't be seeing him. But all in all, I think it's going to be a tough test and a good test for Liverpool and a good preparation as well ahead of the Chelsea game.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on Mane actually because Klopp was asked about him in his pre-match press conference yesterday, and he spoke very highly of him during his time at Liverpool, and sort of touched on why things might not have gone right for him at Bayern Munich, and sort of said that sometimes everything needs to sort of go right. It needs to be a bit of a perfect storm for things to go right for a player at a club. And I mean, obviously, seeing how amazing he was for Liverpool, seeing such sort of diminishing returns when he went to Bayern Munich, it's just sad to see, really, isn't it?
It was. I think more like the off the pitch stuff was sad to see because we didn't see that side of Sadio Mane at all at Liverpool. He was always smiling, always happy. But I think in terms of his performances on the pitch, if you look at his numbers, they weren't that bad. Like they weren't as bad as people made it out to be. I think he still produced a high number of goals and a high number of assists based on per 90 basis. I think in that sense, it was similar to his form for Liverpool before he left for Bayern. So I think he just didn't get the opportunity to play as regularly at Bayern. It seemed like they were going to sign him for the number 9 role, but he didn't quite suit that role as Lewandowski's replacement. And then obviously it was a turbulent time at Bayern as well. So many managers coming in and out. And I think obviously that didn't work in his favour either. And yeah, now in this stage of his career, moving to the Saudi League is going to be interesting to see whether he can revive his form. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what sort of relationships he forms with Cristiano Ronaldo in that division. That's a partnership we probably would have never thought we would see, but now we will.
Yeah, we'll go back to Liverpool's lineup for later. Then, obviously, you mentioned expecting to see quite a strong team. Everyone I seem to ask now has a different idea of what Liverpool's strongest front three looks like. I mean, what are you expecting to see today? And is it the sort of? Are you expecting to see Jurgen Klopp put out a front three today that will be the exact same that starts against Chelsea for the first game of the Premier League season?
I think it's difficult to predict if it's going to be exactly the same because there's just so much talent out there. But I think for me, I would probably go with the most in-form 3 players to start off with, and that based on the goals anyway, is Diogo Jota, Nunez, and Mohamed Salah. I'd go with that front three. Diaz has been pretty good as well. You know, I think he makes a better impact off the bench just in terms of his speed and his energy. That's quite useful to bring on in the second half. And Hakpo is quite useful in terms of, you know, potentially changing the system, coming on for a midfielder if Liverpool need more goals, and he can play that role as well. He's shown in pre-season, potentially in behind Nunez as a sort of number 10 in this new Liverpool midfield. So, yeah, I think to begin with, I'd go with the players who've scored the most goals, who've got the most assists, and then Hakpo and Diaz as well are good options to bring off the bench.
Yeah, as you said earlier, though, we'll expect to see, you know, at least a glimpse of pretty much everyone who has been brought on this Singapore tour. With that in mind, I mean, who are you sort of looking forward to watching most sort of cut their teeth against a much stronger team in Bayern Munich? I mean, personally, I'm definitely hoping that Darwin Núñez can continue sort of his scoring touch and, I mean, carry that through into the season. But yeah, who are you looking forward to seeing most?
I think it's the midfield. Like you mentioned, Nunez, yeah, that's going to be interesting. But for me, obviously, we saw Curtis Jones in this holding midfield position against Leicester, and I think he did really well. But this is going to be another test for him against Bayern Munich if Klopp does decide and to play him there, which is probably likely that's going to happen given Liverpool don't have a lot of options in the holding midfield role. And I'm interested to see how he does, because he did very well there against Leicester and very well in the England under-21 team as well at the Euros earlier this summer. So yeah, probably him. And as well, I mentioned it earlier, I really would like to see McAllister and Szoboszlai link up, maybe in the same midfield as Jones, because I think that's probably the closest midfield that we're going to see against Chelsea. So I would really like to see how that midfield works and how they put up against the challenge of Bayern Munich, which is obviously a completely different level to what we've faced in pre-season so far.
Yeah, well, it remains to be seen what lineup Liverpool will be putting out. But I think one thing that we can, I mean, fairly safely bet on is that Virgil van Dijk will be wearing the armband after he was announced as Liverpool's new captain, Trent Alexander-Arnold as the vice captain as well. And I mean, with Van Dijk sort of having captained Liverpool in Jordan Henderson's absence in the pre-season friendlies anyway, and with all the chatter online, I think it was pretty obvious that Jurgen Klopp was going to make this choice. And do you think it was the obvious choice to make, Ben?
I think so. You know, I think, like you mentioned, Virgil van Dijk has captained Liverpool in the past. He's a clear leader. He is one of the most experienced players in that squad as well now, with all the experience that has departed this summer. So yeah, I think you would have struggled to make a case for anyone else other than Virgil van Dijk. I mean, obviously Trent Alexander-Arnold or maybe Mohamed Salah could have been in the conversation, but I think Van Dijk is just the obvious choice.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Jordan Henderson leaving, he had the armband for quite some time. I don't think anybody, I mean, obviously you look at Virgil van Dijk's age, but I don't think anybody's expecting Virgil van Dijk to have it for anywhere near that length of time, because with Trent being made the vice captain, it does sort of seem that he is being groomed for taking over that skipper role in the next, 3-4 years, doesn't it?
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the Sami Hyypiä situation. Obviously, Hyypiä was one of the best centre-backs in the Premier League at the time, and he got the armband for a couple of years until Steven Gerrard was ready to take over. And I think it's kind of a similar situation. Van Dijk is, I think, going to be turning 31, 32 now, so he's getting on a little bit, even for a centre-back. You wouldn't expect him to stay for as long as, like you mentioned, Henderson stayed. I think Henderson was captain for 7 years. Wouldn't expect Van Dijk to be going on still around 40 and still be captain of Liverpool. So, yeah, I think within the next few years, we'll see that change, and we'll see Trent Alexander-Arnold become the Liverpool captain, barring any huge major surprises or anyone else emerging as a potential candidate for that role. But I think right now I can really see it being that Gerrard Hyypiä example, and I think I've seen loads of posts about it as well on Twitter. A lot of people have mentioned that sort of similarity.
Yeah, I mean, Trent was alongside Jurgen Klopp in his pre-match press conference yesterday. Spoke about wanting to lead by example, and I mean, a few criticisms that were levelled at him last year. I mean, obviously, the obvious one is always about his defending, but a few people were pretty critical of things like his body language at points last year, not running back. Do you think that this sort of leadership role might help to sort of quash any issues like that?
I think so. I think you can see how much it meant to him to be the captain of Liverpool. Obviously, Liverpool released that video when Klopp told him about the decision that he made. You could just tell on his face how emotional he was. He was trying to keep it, hold it in, but it was an important moment for him. And I think, being even the vice captain comes with this added sort of responsibility that I think can help players thrive. And Alexander-Arnold seems to me like one of those players. The more responsibility you give him, the better he becomes. That's why I think he's been so good in this new midfield role, where he has so much more responsibility. He almost has the key to sort of control the whole midfield and the whole way, the way Liverpool play completely. And I think this new challenge, this new sort of responsibility will bring out an even better side of him, and it will give him more motivation and more desire to prove himself.
Yeah, I mean, have you got any worries at all about it upsetting Mo Salah? I mean, we know a few years back he was less than pleased that Trent was sort of given the nod ahead of him as the vice captain, but I mean that was before he signed, the biggest contract in Liverpool history. Do you think there's any cause for concern there at all?
No, I think Klopp is quite good at managing these sort of situations, and I'm sure he would have had a conversation with Salah if Salah was upset about this. Although I don't really see it being an issue. I mean, clearly Alexander-Arnold is a lot more experienced now than he was against Midtjylland when he wore the armband, and Salah was upset about it then. I think he said some comments in Egyptian media or something like that. But now Alexander-Arnold has a lot more experience behind him, and because of that, I think there's a lot more reasons to give him the armband over Salah as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. Evidently, Jurgen Klopp agrees as well. So we'll be seeing a new captain and vice captain in action for the Reds in about 2 hours and 15 minutes. We'll bring you the team news when we have it. That should be sometime around 11. But that is all we've got time for here on the Morning Bulletin this morning. So, Ben, thanks for joining me, and we'll catch you next time.